Welcome to today's CRM Magazine web event, brought to you by Accelereated Cloud and OpenSymmetry. I'm David Myron, Editorial Director of CRM Magazine, and I'll be the moderator for today's broadcast. Our presentation today is titled 5 Keys to Accelerated Lead to Money. Before we start, allow me to explain how you can participate in the live broadcast. At the end of the event, there will be a question and answer session. If you have a question during the presentation, just type it into the question box provided and click on the Submit button. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible, but if your question has not been answered during the show, you will receive an email response to it within a few days. Plus, we'll have a quick polling question during the event. Please select your answer and we'll share the results during the live event. Now, to introduce our speakers for today's event, we have Peter O'Neill, who is the Vice President and Research Director at Forrester, and Laura Roach, who is the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Customer Success at OpenSymmetry. For more information on our speakers today, you can click on the small arrow under their photos on the right side of the console. So now, without further ado, let me pass the event over to our first presenter, Peter O'Neill, Vice President and Research Director at Forrester. Welcome, Peter.
David, thank you very much, and hello everybody, and thank you very much to the various sponsors for inviting me to be part of this event. Looking forward to talking to you about the business benefits of lead to revenue management, which is the term that we use at Forrester that overlaps with this concept of lead to money as Accelereated Cloud talks about it. As you've heard, I'm a research director, one of many research directors, I think around 22 we have at Forrester, and we allocate a research group and a research practice around different roles of the people that we're servicing with our research and our advice. So we don't talk about covering a technology or covering a market. All our analysts actually serve specific roles. And actually, we have a brand new role, which I'm leading since April the 1st of this year. We launched a brand new role because we're seeing so much interest and so much investment and increased activities around the role of B2B marketing. So we've introduced the role of B2B marketing professional since April the 1st and providing research and advice around that, around the needs of people working in that role. Now, of course, B2B has been doing marketing for a long time, so we're being a little bit more focused, and we'd like a lot to talk about the sharp end of B2B marketing. So we don't talk about corporate marketing, branding, search engine optimization, all those other functions that most companies have in their corporate marketing organization, but we're talking about exactly where that increased activity is going on, and that is the area of marketing that has to do with revenue generation, acceleration. So our research is around content marketing, field marketing, solutions marketing, demand management as opposed to demand generation. Of course, channel enablement and sales enablement, a very important part of B2B marketing, is helping sales to be successful. And then underlying the whole process that I've just described in B2B marketing is this lead to revenue management process, which for us is the underlying process that crosses what marketing do and actually what sales do. So that's what I'm doing, and that's the basis very much for most of my comments now in this webinar. So stay with me as I probably behave like most Forrester analysts are behaving, and that is that our mantra is to try and challenge your thinking, make you maybe sit back a bit and reconsider whether the tactics or the improvement projects that you're doing or are planning are enough to be successful in the future with the way that the market and your buyers are now behaving. So our mantra, as I said, is to challenge thinking and then, if possible, to lead change. And in terms of marketing, we are very much around challenge thinking at the moment. We've declared the age of the customer a couple of years ago and have described the age of the customer not just as a trend and a fashion for the year, but it's actually a 20-year business cycle that probably kicked off around 2010. So it's going to be with us for a long time, and it's going to change even more over the next 15 years or so. And it has very much to do with the way that buyers now behave and prefer to interact, to transact, and to engage with their suppliers, with their vendors. Basically, in summary, I think everything that you know about that's going on into the B2C world, and just think of yourselves as a consumer buying cars or music or books or whatever, all of those tendencies come into B2B usually 1 or 2 years or 3 years later, and it's starting to affect the way B2B buyers behave as well. And remember, millennials, those people who are growing up or have grown up with Facebook and Amazon and digital behavior as second nature, are now getting into management positions in companies and enterprises, and within 5 years, let's anticipate they're becoming into executive positions as well. And they will have vastly different expectations of their suppliers and how they deal with their suppliers than they have been, that we've been used to as vendors and manufacturers and B2B companies so far. So we talk about customer obsession. We think that everything you design in your strategy, around your budgeting, around your priorities, even your organization, should be orientated towards your customers, not towards your product lines. And we very much talk about the concept of outside in. Think about how customers think and want you to behave as opposed to how you design from inside out. Which means that we recommend very highly that this should be the basis for design of many of your marketing programs. The B2B customer life cycle, where we see customers going through a 6-stage life cycle as they are buying initially, but also, as you'll see in a moment, retaining business with you, maybe buying more or buying different products that you're offering, or even renewing their service, because of course most industries these days are tending to move towards an as-a-service delivery model, right from software right through to multi-million-dollar aircraft engines that these days are actually delivered as a service as opposed to a transaction basis. And of course, everything as a service needs to be renewed. So the phases that you can see here from discover right through to engage are actually now phases that we are recommending that should all be considered and worked upon by marketing campaigns and marketing programs. So on the next slide, we try to define those phases. Whoops, a little bit more detail. I've clicked too many arrows. Bear with me a moment. And in the brown boxes, you can see described what we think that marketing should be doing. But let me take you around the blue life cycle, from the customer's point of view, and how I often see business projects being put together. In the discover phase, what's happening there is that business buyers are discovering that they have a need to do something. They are starting to wonder about how to improve business processes, make them more efficient, more effective, maybe even to transform and combine the business processes. And they start to wonder how to do that, and their way these days of how to do that wondering is putting words into search engines, looking for information on the web, discussing with their peers, either at conferences, in meetings, or on the web in discussion forums or in communities, finding out about how other companies have solved similar issues. And as the orange box says here, the information that you marketers need to provide there is around best practices, case studies, similar scenarios and scenes across their industry, but very, very business-orientated information. There's going to be a trigger at some point where the buyer moves from discover to explore. And that trigger basically has the emotion that, yes, I'm going to do something about it, and they start to do explore, which is actually putting their project together. Now, in business world, their project is always much more than what you offer as a vendor or as a technology provider or as a business service provider. Their project is buying something, products and services from different vendors maybe, but also, of course, considering change within their organization, training up people in their organization, maybe transforming the organization itself. So their project is, of course, much more complex, much more imposing than just the acquisition of technologies and services. The next trigger after explore is that they're ready now to go through, well, what is often a formal RFP process, RFI process that most of us know about. That's the buy phase, and that's where they are talking to potential vendors and evaluating. Maybe demos and prototypes are being set up, proof of concepts, and so on. You know this world very well. That's where we as B2B marketers are very familiar in our work. That's where, to be honest, most of our content work, collateral, has been focused upon, and that's where we've trained our sales force to be very good at working in the buy phase. But I think the way that I've talked about discover and explore, you'll find that it's now important for us in marketing and also in the sales organization for them to be very active and successful in discover and explore. And to be honest, it doesn't stop there. Once our customers are using our products and services, we need to help them be successful. Often in software as a sales businesses, you see a customer success manager now being installed to work on things like that. That's really a marketing function as well. And right through to the engage phase, where great marketers these days are actually finding customers who are delighted with their use of the products or technologies or services and encouraging and facilitating those customers to be advocates, to actually go out and use the media to find and help new buyers in their discover phase and generate more business for the supplier. So that in full is that whole customer life cycle, and to say, certainly much more than maybe we've been used to working on in the past. And of course, it's even much more than that, because in the modern world these days, and I'm trying to work out how often I need to click on this thing to get it to work, it's not just one series, one journey around that life cycle. Most of us are working with our customers hopefully for a longer period of time in an engagement scenario. We acquire them as a new logo customer, and hopefully we retain business with that customer and we grow our business with that customer. So there's a whole series of different life cycles involved in terms of our marketing. So what? A cycle of cycle, I suppose. Represented here on this graphic. You can see the discover, explore, buy life cycle as a sort of backbone down this graphic. But each of those phases is itself a cycle, and there's a multitude of sources, information sources, influencers, marketing vehicles that are deployed and used around all those different phases, as you can see on this complicated graphic that's representing that. And the world isn't ideal, so it's not sequential anymore, to be honest. We no longer have an ideal funnel because, lo and behold, our buyers are now tending to jump around from source to source and in phase to phase to find and work on their projects. So it's very difficult nowadays to even identify a clear funnel behavior that maybe we've been used to be doing when we've been doing our campaign marketing in the past. Let me give you some statistics just to back the difficulty up. In a very recent survey that we did in the first quarter of this year, we were told that by buyers, that 3/4 of those buyers are now definitely preferring to research the information that they need online. And they find it actually superior and more rewarding than talking to salespeople. Which is the reason for some of the reports that we put out at Forrester questioning the structure of the B2B sales forces in the future and talking about the new skill sets that salespeople need to have to be successful in the future. Some more general research that Forrester does has discovered that actually buyers are using more than 10 vehicles, i.e. content artifacts or content delivery channels in each of those phases. It becomes a very complicated world for us marketers to be successful to help our buyers to go down their journey with our content, using our content. And the third statistic just confirms the first statistic, 73, 74, that's pretty close, came from a separate survey just to show that we're getting a consistent story now from the marketplace and from the buyers that we survey. So we're telling our clients to be customer obsessed. We're telling our clients now to basically plan all their marketing around the context of their customer needs and also where the buyer is in their journey, and even to move away from the sort of cold calling, email type, campaign type of marketing. So move away from the funnel and really think of the whole metaphor now as something else. And the picture that we've selected to try and bring that point across is this escalator. We see buyers now actually moving up an escalator. Of course, as far as we're concerned in buyers, as marketers, these buyers are at different phases. We can call them and identify them as a sales qualified lead at the bottom of an escalator. We can help them to be more knowledgeable and be more eager to buy things and call them a marketing qualified lead later on in the stage. And we can do even better and pass them across to our sales colleagues as a sales opportunity. You know all those terms in your lead to revenue management system. The concept and the metaphor of the escalator, though, makes us think that what we're doing is helping buyers to get up that escalator. The reason that we're providing content is to help buyers to buy, help buyers to come to their decision. Much different than actually persuading them to take our product. That's something that really comes to play in the buy phase only, but in all the other phases, we're doing a different type of work, as you can see represented here. So, lead to revenue management, that's the term and the process that we're recommending. That's the customer life cycle I've talked to you, and here's the matching up of the lead to revenue management process against that customer life cycle. We've done some extensive research here at Forrester to help our clients to address this process, to put this process together, to reorganize to this process, to automate the process. We have what's called a playbook of reports, which means actually a series of 12 different reports which talk to the lead to revenue management process. The playbook is a standard layout of reports, and it helps clients understand to generate the business case to do this project, the lead to revenue management project. It helps them to develop success metrics. It helps them to understand how to reorganize. It helps them to understand maybe what technology to buy to support the lead to revenue management process. And accordingly, we've also provided what's called a Forrester Wave to help our clients to understand all the different products around that support the lead to revenue management process. And of course, the Forrester Wave that we published includes a review of Calidus Cloud in that report as well. So quite extensive reports and advice and workshops that we can provide around this work. Now here's one of the major graphics that we use in these workshops. Well, how do you do it? What's the roadmap that you need to establish your lead to revenue management process? Well, most importantly is your lead to revenue management project needs to be aligned to those corporate goals that your company have, in which you'll get information about what are the most important product lines or growth markets that your company feel need to be focused upon next year. That should give you some guidance about maybe where to apply these processes. And then, of course, we think it's imperative that you spend time, do research, and understand your buyers much better. It's a common answer that I get inquiries with clients. Yes, we know our customers. We know them very well. We don't need to spend extra time or resources to do that. But I don't hesitate anymore to disagree, because that often just isn't true, especially because the way that buyers have now changed, especially over the last couple of years, in their preference for digital media, in their preference for social media, in their preference not to talk to salespeople necessarily, which has been a habit that most of us have gotten used to over the last years. So it is definitely worth time, everybody, documenting buyer journeys, buyer roles, personas, all that type of work that comes to play when you're planning your content strategy, your engagement strategy around this work. What we have noticed with many clients is that buyer journey research can be a lot of work, and you do end up with a lot of buyer journeys. The larger enterprises end up with hundreds of buyer journeys. Even small enterprises that maybe have 2 products, but they're selling into maybe 3 different industries, quickly come up with a dozen or 15 different buyer journeys. And of course, that's very difficult to work with. It's far too much input for either marketing plans or sales trainings. And so the question very often now is, how do I prioritize? Well, one answer is look at the corporate goals and take that as guidance for the most important areas that you need to prioritize, the most important product lines or target markets that your company feels are most important. But we also will be providing research over the next months, which is called a go-to-customer model, that will help companies ready to apply methodology to scale and to prioritize all these different buyer journeys and all the different buyer journey research that they've collected. Out of the research and the planning comes then your content marketing strategy, your channel strategy. You may develop a thought leadership program, and so on. You can see all the details listed here. And of course, very important with these types of programs is what is the return on investment? your management will be asking you, and that's going to be the theme now for the rest of this short presentation. How do you document and talk about and report back the return on these projects, on this project, the Lead to Revenue Management project? So here you can see some of the details around aligning your Lead to Revenue Management to the strategy of your company. Some advice given here about prioritizing or even picking your early success project. It's hardly realistic that you will apply Lead to Revenue Management across your whole marketing organization, across all your business units if you are a very complex organization. You need to pick and choose. You need to be a little bit more focused. You need to have success, as in any project introduction. And here's some guidance here about how to do that you can peruse when you get back home and look at these slides. Now, the benefits out of applying this project are at 3 different stages or 3 different types. There are definitely some very strategic benefits that you will be able to get out of these projects, and they're quite different and have different importance and relevance to different managements, of course, than the operational benefits or the tactical benefits. So depending on who you talk to, if you're talking to the CEO, the CFO, you might want to focus on reporting and highlighting the strategic benefits. If you're talking to line managers, line of business people, maybe sales managers, you might want to focus more on the tactical benefits or the operational benefits. Remember the context of the people that you talk to internally as a guidance towards how you report the success of your projects and your change projects. When we've helped clients to look at their Lead to Revenue Management projects and reporting success, we basically put together a whole set of metrics that will help them to understand it. And the metrics are based on this concept of return on marketing investment. And on the one side, there's definitely a return, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but there is definitely, let's not avoid that fact, there is going to be investment involved if you're applying a Lead to Revenue Management process. Our experience, by the way, in terms of investment is that there are probably 4 or 5 different categories of investment that most companies will put out. Definitely, you will want to adopt technology. You will invest in software. We find that smaller companies, smaller than $20 million companies, they're investing 10 to 25K around software. The very large enterprises are investing up to over $500,000, $750,000 in their software packages. But there's usually headcount investment as well, maybe 1 FTE at the smaller companies, but probably a larger team, a director and 2 or 5 FTEs in the enterprise levels. Training, integration costs, external professional services that you might get in for the implementation projects. Data management is a very important factor of being successful here, and you probably need to invest some money there around managing your data. And process changes will also be something that you will include in your budget as a recurring cost over time around Lead to Revenue Management, something similar to the technology software investment for small companies and for enterprise companies. Now, in terms of metrics, we would recommend the so-called 3 V's and 2 E's in terms of analyzing and understanding what type of success metrics you have. And I'd like to make you an offer now, you as a listener and viewer to this webinar. Right at the end of my presentation, you'll see the email address that I have, and I'd like to invite you, if you're interested, send me an email and tell me how you find this presentation, and I will send you as return a copy of our Lead to Revenue Management metrics reports, which goes into these different metrics, success metrics in more detail, and will help you to understand and to calibrate your project against these metrics. So here you can see the different metrics listed out in those categories, the 3 V's and the 3 E's. You can see all the different levels of detail that we've been working on and thinking about, and the report that I just talked about goes into all these different line items in more detail, just to help you understand it much more. So I'd like to close now with one last statistic to prove that this is a very important process and also a very successful process for marketers. We did a lot of interviews around marketers about their success, and were able to identify successful marketers based on their contribution to pipeline, based on the growth of their companies and so on. We put that together in a report as well, which is referenced here, which a colleague of mine in my group wrote out. But very importantly, in that report, we highlighted that the successful marketers were doing two things very well. They were leveraging automation, lead to revenue management automation systems. The even better ones were actually integrating those lead to revenue management automation systems to the CRM systems that their sales colleagues were using. Our vision, by the way, is that those two systems will merge together over the next 4 or 5 years in many companies. So the one thing is automation, but the other thing is a consequence of understanding lead to revenue management is that marketing and sales have equal roles. It's no longer the case that marketing just generates leads, names and addresses, and passes them across blindly over to sales and expects sales to do all the rest of the work. It's now actually very much an overlap. Salespeople will be asked in the discover phase, and we need as marketers to help them to answer those questions. We need to give them different information than we have done so far, because the last thing the buyer wants to hear in their discover phase is a sales presentation of a product. So we have to help salespeople give business-orientated answers, give educational answers, curate content, or pass people or show the buyer different content around case studies and best practices from their peers. Different skills, different conversation elements that, to be honest, to date we haven't really helped our salespeople very well with our training programs and so on. So that's definitely something that's very important. So the collaboration and the work of sales and marketing together is also a very important factor around here. So what we've discovered in our analysis is that the really strong marketers are actually, in the meantime, now attributing more than 50% of the sales pipeline, contributing more than 50% of the sales pipeline. And that changes the whole organization. Sales appreciate and realize what marketing is doing with them. For me, a very important test of maturity is when I hear from salespeople that they often have a discussion with the customer. They decide that customer or that buyer is in their discover phase, and they, the salesperson, enter the lead into the marketing system and expect marketing to do the work to help the customer along the phases, and then will assume that they'll be involved again in the buy phase. And if salespeople have that trust in the lead to revenue management system that's been put together, they have that trust in the work that marketing does in terms of providing content, nurturing content, and helping the buyer along their journey. That's a very important sign of maturity and a sign that the lead to revenue management system has been well established. 50% or more contributing to the pipeline. Okay, well, thanks for listening. That's as much time as I have. I hope that was of interest to you. Here is that email address that I promised to you. I look forward to hearing from you and would give you that report in return. I'd like to hand you now back to David.
All right, great. Thank you, Peter. Now, with that, let's hand the event over to our next presenter, Laura Roach, who is the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Customer Success at OpenSymmetry. Welcome to the broadcast, Laura.
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Peter, for your presentation and insights, because as a marketer myself, I can appreciate that focus on customer success and marketing, but also enabling sales. And I look at that as a comparison, and maybe it's because it's July and Tour de France is on my mind as a cyclist, but I compare it to whether you want to be the peloton or a breakaway. You know, which is more successful, the peloton or the breakaway? And I really think it depends, because if your goal is one win and lots of airtime for your sponsors, which may be a goal of a marketer, right, then it's worth the effort for that breakaway. But typically, if you're looking at a long-term strategy to win, if you're in the Tour de France and you want to be that GC person or get the titles of sprinter, top hill, youngest rider, then really your focus is on that total organism of the peloton. You know, you have that whole peloton as a big organism, but it's made up of different teams, right? And with each team, there's actually different agendas and different roles, just like an organization has. And you have market conditions as well. As an organization, you might need to adjust the same as a peloton. Consider how the peloton adjusts to a hill climb and what they do when they're trying to get somebody up there, or sprints, wind, rain, cobblestone, heck, even all the unexpected falls. It's great to watch it, but if you watch it, you start seeing how this actual peloton is a living organism, and everybody's working together with an ongoing effort towards both their short-term and long-term goals. And statistically speaking, the peloton always wins. So I kind of like to align it with that and compare it to this experience between sales and marketing, right? And that lead to money. So as Peter mentioned in his presentation, this process of alignment with the customer buyer journey, right, that outside circle there, and then to the lead to revenue process, where the money is, right, it's not easy. And the more effective an organization is on the front end with the customer experience and everything that Peter was sharing with us, the higher the margins, that's the money, as well as the better the customer and employee retention and ultimately the success rate of an organization is. So if you're extending this further from, just marketing and sales, right, there's this layer of complexity when you add in the other departments in your business, right, the other constituents. Just like the Peloton, you want to have all these aligned and synchronizing. So we see this intersection of connecting the customer journey to the sales journey with sales performance management. And it's across these departments, right? So take finance and HR. They have different goals than sales and marketing. But if we go back to the age of the customer, what Peter was talking about, really the focus needs to start with aligning and enabling and embracing that customer. But to do that, you need to also align that across your organization, right? So, if you look at this holistically, it's not a bunch of siloed processes or technologies in your business, but it's that combined effort right there. And as Peter referenced, we need to stop thinking about this as a funnel, right? You typically think about this as a funnel, but really it's that elevator, right? That customer journey, which is multifaceted. It's not linear. It's in anything. It's circular with a spiral in the middle, right? So as we look at the critical elements with alignment of sales and marketing, you might think the answer is just to focus on that lead to opportunity management, right? The lead marketing automation, CRM integration only. But you can see there's a great deal more going on here if you expect this to get synthesized. So often you have each organization and each solution working in a silo, or what we might call a breakaway, right? In the long term, it's not going to be effective. So the companies that align sales incentives to the customer journey, right, and hire the right sales talent, as Peter referenced, we really need to be thinking differently on what the sales talent is to meet the customer needs, and then optimize the incentive compensation process to match it. Those companies are the ones that are getting an advantage over their competitors, right? And so we call this optimization kind of really where you get to lead to money. So I want to hear from you, and I'll pass this back to David for a quick poll.
All right, great. Thank you. And the poll should be appearing on your screen now. The poll question reads, what is your barrier in implementing a holistic lead-to-money integrated solution? Please select one of the following: making the business case, funding, adverse to cloud solutions, investment in other tools, or other. And while we're waiting for the poll results, I'd like to just take this opportunity to remind you that we will have a question and answer session at the end of the broadcast. If you have a question during the presentation, just type it into the question box provided and click on the submit button. As I stated earlier, we'll try to answer as many questions as possible, but if your question has not been answered during the show, you will receive an email response to it within a few days. Okay, so it looks like the poll results are in, and in response to the question, what is your barrier in implementing a holistic lead-to-money integrated solution? It looks like we have a tie at 45.5% between making the business case and funding. So pretty interesting results. I wonder, Laura, if that's what you're finding with your prospects and clients as well.
Absolutely, and I think it's very telling that it's actually a pretty split, right? Because typically the challenge with making that business case and funding is they're both aligned, right? You need to make that business case to get the funding. So you really have to have that value proposition now to be able to compete with everything that's going on in your organization. I kind of think about, when I was to ask this to myself, I kind of thought, what is my barrier? When do I have those struggles as a consumer myself in trying to do this? And I kind of, think back to time and energy, right? Time and energy is the biggest equalizer for everyone, whether you're a customer or you're in a business and you're trying to support your department. So take example, yourself, right? Today, you had to make a choice to register and attend this session against all the other pressures and demands you have going on, right? The same thing in your business organization. You have to balance that time and energy. So have you ever heard yourself say, right, if only I had more resources, or I had more budget, or I had more time, if only sales would close more business, if only marketing would give me more quality leads, if only finance wouldn't make it so hard to review these contracts and get a business case together. So sometimes technology can just seem to make things hard, but really that technology needs to be things that are making it easier, right? It can be easier if you actually have technology to enable those processes to give you more time and energy. And so you need to be leveraging that technology. So what I want to share here is some of those approaches on kind of why you should need this and why you should help make a business case for it, and how it would benefit you with some of the work we've done with some clients. So focusing on automating the whole process, not just silos, to drive those efficiencies. How do you get that increased productivity to be more agile? Ultimately, delivering that higher customer engagement and bringing in more money to the company. I always like to kind of start with, why should you care? Well, increased productivity is something you should care about as an organization. It translates quickly into value. And at OpenSymmetry, we've been working with best-in-class solutions end-to-end over 10 years dedicated to this. In fact, we've seen benefits referenced from the analysts on this with real results, with over 1,500 solutions across 17 industries globally. So there's proof there in moving away from the status quo in those silos to achieve more, make more, and sell smarter. So if we know from all the analyst research as well as customers experiencing these challenges, right, that the old way and old approaches are not the best way, and we know that companies that deploy best-in-class integrated solutions experience better benefits, right? They have higher customer sat. They actually outperform their competitors, right? So you refer back to the poll and you go, wow, why aren't you doing more of this? Why aren't all companies doing this? And what's holding you back? And hearing, it has a little bit to putting together that business case and competing priorities at the organization. I'm sure people are nodding their head, yes, I want to have better performance and outperform my competitors. That seems to be kind of an obvious choice. But aside from making more money, sometimes we just get focused on that end result of the return from the money. What else should you be focused on? And we really see that as people too, right? And Peter kind of referenced that change in how we look at the sales role. So instead of that quick fix to retain talent, very often, increase salaries or tweak a comp plan, you really need to consider now that right talent for selling to the right customers first. And if you understand based on really that buyer journey first and what you need to be serving up, then you can assess why maybe sales reps are leaving. But I challenge everyone here that maybe you need to actually consider that your sales reps don't match your customer profiles. Like Peter explained, knowing your customers in marketing to optimize that lead to money or lead to revenue management activities, that's going to help your sales team be much more engaged and enabled, right? You need to make sure your salespeople's job roles and strengths are matched to what your customers' desires and needs are. That's another element kind of on retention. But to do that, you really need to enable your sales force and get them engaged with the right content, right? So if you think about why people leave or stay, one big driver is typically their manager, but actually the biggest driver in a recent article I was reading was clear line of sight to their development and success on why people leave, right? So if you think the average tenure for a U.S. worker is 4.6 years, and then you layer in that against millennials, it's 3.2, which is the lowest amongst any generations to date. So those are not just our buyers out there, but those are our future sales professionals as well. and then you layer on even lower hospitality is 2.4, that's a big problem if you start adding that up. So how do you make sure when we connect the dots that the customer's buying behavior and what you want to achieve as a company is aligned? And then further exacerbate the problem is, you look at top sales leaders here, and so if you're a marketer or a sales leader, you're focused on how can we enable the salespeople. You don't want them spending too much time on non-selling activities. You need to quickly enable them, serve them up just like the customer with the right content and information that they need to engage with their customers. Back to that clear line of sight for sales rep goals and how to achieve them. So if you go back to my Peloton analogy, you need the team focused on what matters to achieve great results, right? You need them laser focused. And companies that can provide the clear line of sight have an advantage, even with those clarities on goals, right? And the right plans, and the next big challenge is process, right? If you're not optimizing, as I mentioned, time and energy, there's only so much, unless you have a time machine, you really have to optimize what's out there. So we know customers control their own journeys. In fact, as Peter mentioned, it's the age of the customer. We need to be obsessed with the customer and really take that outside-in approach. We know that lead to revenue and money is a journey that starts with a customer and is multifaceted. We know we must provide clarity to sales and customers to engage. And as business leaders, how do we get this done? So we see 5 really keys to getting this done. Instead of trying to boil the ocean in all those different areas, we can laser focus in on those steps. And marketing automation is really the first step to generating those high-quality leads with rich intelligence about what buyers are doing and when, capturing that insight and that intent, nurturing leads that aren't ready to buy and pass, and that engagement between sales and marketing actually being aligned and partners in this effort so that sales focuses on what they need to focus on and marketing focuses on what they need to, right? And then taking that to the next step of being able to define your territories and those accounts, that industry, and where you want to focus your energies, right, as sales and marketers, so that it's meeting your customer's need. And being able to actually analyze those territories is there's a lot of data out there, and you need to be able to match them together, connect them in a meaningful manner, and serve them up to the customer that gives them value. Analyzing that. And just, heck, maybe we should even rock the boat here on quotas and territories, and maybe we should be looking at territories as letting the customers decide what they want to engage with and defining customer territories and letting them drive that. I mean, it's looking at this from the customer's eyes and getting those new hires productive. And not just new hires, it's new hires as well as your existing sales force. Often new hires have to get certifications, and we need to match them, right, to the profiles of what we need for our customers, and then allow them to make it easy, right? Make it easy for them to move the customer through the sales cycle. Don't have them having to wait. Be able to serve up what we need to the customer quickly. And we see that with workflows and being able to configure and provide those quotes and those contracts to them easily. And then pay, right? That's the money. It's not just paying to the company, but paying the right incentives to drive the behavior you need. In fact, I think I was reading in some of the Forrester research that I've seen that companies using a contract lifecycle management system have seen an increase in customer renewals to 73%. That's real money, right? That's real insight to the front part of that funnel throughout the end of that funnel. Think about that elevator, right? It's continuing to grow and manage that effort to your customers, not just on the front end, but also renewing them and keeping them for life, right? So we find the best way to do that is assessing where you fit into that. If you think back to understanding how the benefits manifest, your benefit case study, right? Where are you? Most companies are around that 1.5 to 2.5. You want to be in that upper right quadrant of being strategic benefits. And so we look at this holistically across all of these pillars and then say, well, let's look at this. We can go, excuse me, I went a little quick. We can go a mile wide and look at the entire end-to-end process, or we can dive deep into each of these areas. As I mentioned with the Peloton, it's more than just one agenda here. It is a cycle of things that we're driving. So if you look at that end-to-end assessment and say, okay, where do I want to dig in? Figure out where is that effort that you want to go for, right? Where do you get the most value? And drive there and start there with the approach to be able to say, this is where we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck as marketers and sales leaders. So as I mentioned, you can go broad. So if we look across that top pillar there around that, you can go broad or you can go deep. And as Peter was mentioning and talking about the lead to revenue cycle, you could go deep in those areas. And we have a 10-step approach to kind of looking at that. Or you could go deep and configure price quote or commissions and incentives. It depends on where you need to go deep. But you need to do that to see where you want to be. So if you take an example of a high-tech company we worked with, they were going through some channel changes, right? So they needed to assess where they wanted to be with their channels and realign them and realign the sales structure. So after going through this and getting some of those roadmap suggestions, they were actually able to quickly enable their technology and their approach to basically do a channel and territory realignment to match their customers. And we're able to actually achieve profitability on licensed sales sooner and increase that selling time. Another example I have here for new go-to-market strategies. Here a pharma and medical case study was around how do we actually get these solutions out there, and really needed to do a sales and marketing role assessment and implement a technology. Right? What is that go-to-market strategy to match it to what we needed with the customer profiles on the sales and organization, and ultimately identifying the best solution technology could provide. Taking it in another angle from an insurance standpoint, looking at complex sales channels. They have third-party networks. They have huge turnover and understaffed and high retention challenges. They needed to look at really what is that approach to this highly competitive market and speed them up. So they needed to speed up that lead to revenue and incentive comp, and they needed to look at that across a leverage of complexity of plans, sales channels, and a resource. They were very resource constrained, so they really had to optimize. So now they're able to actually coordinate this and use this with a technology solution. So you have to be agile. I just threw a plethora of challenges at you, and there's no way you're going to be able to kind of get all of these done with just one business process or one tweak to something. You need an agile, proven platform. You need to have this lead to revenue money solution here. And sales needs the quality information about those leads and territories to map it to that correct rep, right? Take an example here, a lead stat. The time of a lead coming in to a sales rep from 1 hour to 3 minutes. If you can shorten that cycle where you get a higher conversion rate by 60%, now do you think the sales reps are spending time on what they need to do? So how do you make sure your sales rep isn't wasting your customer's time? It's enablement. It's getting that right information to the rep at the right time and what that customer needs so you can move that customer through that process. To be effective, you need to ensure the rep's time is maximized, right? A big drain on time is quotes and proposals, as I mentioned. They all need to be linked together by a targeted incentive that drives it all together. So there's a plethora of choices that you can look at across all of the vendors in this space. Or what we love with OpenSymmetry and Callidus is that you could use the Callidus Cloud as one single vendor. So that takes some of the confusion away from you. Now you can look at your lead all the way to money, that whole customer and lead to money process, and get a lower total cost of ownership and increase your return on that investment. It's a modern, integrated, end-to-end solution. So remember my slides earlier about the customer journey. Callidus Cloud is uniquely positioned to help support this entire end-to-end process, from knowing your customers up front and throughout their journey with you. So now, as a B2B marketer, you care about enabling that customer. So you can enable your sales team to quickly learn up front what the customer and prospect desires and serve them up what they need to convert those leads to business, aka money, right? Both to your company and to their pockets as a sales rep, and then they increase incentives and commissions. This experience for the customer is so much more than just a marketing automation tool, right, or an incentive compensation tool, but it's that living experience across your organization and those various touch points from the customer. So Callidus Cloud gets that, right? They have this end-to-end solution as well as all the way to the end where you survey and engage your customer for life. So it's not just getting your customer, it's embracing them, hugging them, and basically keeping them engaged for life. So you need to deliver on those promises that you have to your customers and start with your customers. Know where you want to go. What's your future vision? Take that structured, holistic, integrated planning approach where you lay out really what you need to achieve and then engage there on actually executing. So in conclusion, success is really that trusted path to the top. You really need to leverage the comprehensive and robust technology like Callidus Cloud, and then best practices on your business process with OpenSymmetry's SPM assessment and future state roadmap so we can map you a trusted path to the top. So I thank you for your time, and I appreciate this, and I think I'll hand it over to you, David, to open it for Q&A.
All right, great. Thank you for that, Laura. Yes, so we are ready to launch our Q&A session. I do have a few questions that I'd like to ask our panelists. So I'd also like to remind our viewers that if you have a question, just type it into the question box submitted. We'll try to get to as many as possible, but if we don't, you will receive an email response to it within a few days. Okay, so with that, my first question is to Peter. Peter, how would marketers know about the buyer journey?
Very common question I get in inquiries as well. And you have to do research. You have to ask the buyers. So that's a research project. Now, I'm not saying that you should spend lots of money with Forrester to do that work for you, although, of course, we wouldn't say no. It's actually something that you can do yourself. Go out and talk to people. I mean, start with your salespeople. Go and talk to your salespeople and ask them and get information about the people they work with, the buyer teams that they sold to and they worked on. And then continue and talk to those buyers themselves. But now there's an important trick here. Remember that phase that I had, discover, explore, buy, and so on. Now, very often in most of our products and most of our services, the people that we sell to are not necessarily the people who are active as buyers in the discover phase. There's a sort of concept of people who are buying technology and people who are using technology. And so you have to think about the users as well. And so when you go to your customer and talk to the buyer, you need to ask your buyer, well, who did you buy this for? Who was the colleague in your company that came to you 6 months ago, 9 months ago and says, I need this, I need a solution for this problem, put this project together, find me the right solution. And so get that name and then go to them because they're the ones that are going to tell you about the discover phase. What do you do with them? You ask them questions about what were they doing in the discover phase, what questions were they asking themselves, important things to know, what words were they using, how do they describe their problems, because you're going to find that they have a total different taxonomy than your product solution has in its design. They're going to be much more business orientated. They're going to have a different point of view, outside in, as opposed to inside out of your company. So ask them what words they use in the search engines, ask them to describe their scenario, their problems, because that is information that you'll take back with you and put into your content plans and even include in your content. Because out of the buyer journey research, what you want to have happen is that you have content out there that will be found by the next person who is in their discovery phase who's looking for information.
So, Peter, another question. Do you think that sales will have to change as well, based on your view of lead to money?
Oh,
lead
so I was dropping some hints about that already, wasn't I? And definitely yes, and why not? In traditional B2B world, it was very often the case that the buyers would have relationship with salespeople, and they would trust information, and salespeople would spend a lot of time educating them about products, upcoming products, future products, and things like that, and maybe sometimes representing the customer back to their own organization in terms of inputs to R&D. That happens a lot as well. But nowadays, in the age of the customer and the world that I've described, where buyers are now tending to do their own research, they have different expectations of salespeople. And also they have a higher standard of expectation. So we've seen very often now the scenario, if the people in their discover phase do meet a salesperson from a company and ask them a business-orientated question, a question about a business problem, and the salesperson is only trained to pull out their latest slides and present their latest product in response, not only is the business buyer going to be irritated by the response, it's going to be even worse. The business buyer is going to make a note of that company and probably not include that company in their future plans or in their buy phase. And so salespeople will have to be helped to be successful in those conversations as well. We've done an analysis of B2B salespeople. It's no secret, I hope, that we put out a report just a few weeks ago entitled provocatively, The Death of the B2B Salesman, where we actually put together a forecast that says in the US, by the way, there are 4.5 million B2B salespeople, and we reckon that about 1 million of those B2B salespeople will no longer be required in that job over the next 5 or 6 years. They are order takers, that's the archetype that we designed. They are not providing added value either to the buyers or, to be honest, to the company they work for anymore. And so they're going to be automated away through e-commerce transactions, through automatic configuration systems, and so on and so on. But we see increases in other types of sales. We also see an increased activity in inside sales organizations and having subject matter experts inside providing telephone advice to buyers in their buyer journey. So yes, quite radical changes going on in there.
I would echo that too, Peter, because I think what you're having to do is really change the sales approach based on the customer's behaviors. And if you're not aligning those two and building to what the strengths would be of that sales rep, then you're not really servicing that customer effectively, nor is your sales rep set up for success. Right. And so we're really seeing that, and I know Forrester has some great research on that as well, but that transformation between the customer, what they need, and what the sales rep needs, and being able to have the technology to support that transformation.
I'm even hearing from some companies that we don't want our sales reps to sell anymore. We want them to help the buyer to buy.
Yes.
Totally different attitude, a different culture.
Yeah, actually, I think we covered exactly that issue, Peter, in a recent issue of CRM Magazine, and I believe we spoke to you on that regarding the routine sales actions that will sort of be phased out, and they'll need to learn more become more outsourcers or become more specialized in their services to the clients as time goes on. Otherwise, they will be phased out.
Yep.
Another question for you. If the customer journey is something the customer creates or designs for him or herself, how do you use the early part of the journey to your advantage?
Well, I mean, the customer doesn't design a journey, they just experience the journey. So, I mean, they don't even plan it themselves. So that's why we need to do that research and ask them what they did. It's not as scientific as saying, what are you going to do in the next 2 years? But people who have that knowledge, who've done that research, they're going to be successful. Because I think what's going to happen is that if you as a vendor are not actively you're not recognized as helping a buyer to go through their discover and explore phases, then to be honest, you're not going to be in the buy phase at all. You're not going to be in that list of people they send an RFP to or invite in to give a demonstration. And to be honest, my message to marketers and salespeople is if you are getting invited to those phases and you have not connected with the buyers previous to that, don't go, because they're just using you as an alibi and as a price comparison.
So to echo, I would just expand on that a bit, Peter, because I think one other advantage, and I think technology can help, right? So you can start capturing those customer behaviors if you actually have that lead marketing automation, right? And you're starting to see what they're wanting, what their behaviors are. So you're able to actually use data to start profiling that as well to really craft up those buyer personas and serve that up. And that's why I absolutely love the Calidus Cloud integrated solution, is because you can serve that up and enable and coach and train those sales reps, right? And you can do that in a way that's leveraging technology. Especially, I'm passionate about this because I head up our marketing and customer success, and we're a really lean, small team, right? But we need to be able to engage and drive all that, and there's no way you could do that without enabling technology to make you be nimble and agile.
All right, thanks for that. We're actually a couple minutes past the top of the hour, but we do have one question from one of our viewers. James writes, Laura, any lead-to-money white papers that you can recommend we read?
Well, I'll say you're going to get served up with a URL after this with a landing page for Calidus and OpenSymmetry with one right on there. And so I would definitely start there, as well as the resource centers from both of our organizations. And obviously, Forrester Research has a plethora of content as well.
All right, thanks for that. And thank you for everyone who submitted their questions. Also, thanks to our speakers today, Peter O'Neill, Vice President and Research Director at Forrester Research, as well as Laura Roach, Senior Vice President of Marketing and Customer Success at OpenSymmetry. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, you can download it once the event is archived. And if you'd like to review this event or send it to a colleague, please use the same web address that you used for today's event. It will be archived for 90 days. Plus, as a courtesy, you'll receive an email tomorrow with the web address to view the archive. And if you'd like a copy of the presentation, it will be available in the resource icon once the event is archived. And just for participating in today's event, you can win this Chromecast, this Google Chromecast. The winner will be announced on July 31st. Please go to www.destinationcrm.com to see if you're the winner. And if you stay on the console at the end of the event, you will automatically be directed to a joint OpenSymmetry and Calidus Cloud web page. This concludes our broadcast. Thank you for joining us.